what you've written in the past seems to definitely practice some interdisciplinarity, marrying geography with other disciplines like cultural studies, anthropology, and epidemiology when you're looking at, was it cholera?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe you could tell us a little bit more about those conjunctures in your own work and how you've been able to practice interdisciplinarity, if you consider it to be that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't really care whether it's called interdisciplinarity, multidisciplinarity, antidisciplinarity, transdisciplinarity, or whatever. Okay. Geography is not well established in this country, and I think that's a real shame. Geography is the study of the Earth as our home. This is Humboldt's definition from Germany in the 19th century. I think it's a good one, because a home is many things. You know, it's a physical thing. It's a shelter. So in that sense, we can think of geography as environment, how we make a home on Earth physically, how we support our biological and physical needs from the biotic resources we find around us. But a home is also a place. We talk about feeling at home, coming home. You know, this is an existential question. It's so we invest certain sites or locales with meaning, and that makes us feel comfortable. And so geography in that sense is place. So geography is environment, shelter, and so on. The home is shelter. Geography is place, the home as being at home, dwelling. We make ourselves at home on Earth through interdependencies and relationships which extend beyond the place where we sleep. So we have these horizontal connections in addition to the vertical connections of environment. We have these horizontal connections to what people are doing in other places. I often ask students, you know, how long would you survive if you sort of lived in the 28-day scenario? You know, and by the time you've broken the window of the local supermarket and sort of eaten baked beans for a while, you'd find that actually there's very little you could do for yourself. I mean, how long would it take you to, you know, reinvent penicillin or whatever? You know, these interdependencies, a division of labour which is organised spatially, is a very important part of how we make home. So home is environment, it is place, and it is space. And they're the three central themes of geography. Now, there are many other ways of understanding our lives, but focusing on how we make ourselves at home on Earth is a good one. And it's a very good one, I think, for undergraduate instruction. And it's where I come from. It's my discipline. Now, what does this mean in terms of interdisciplinarity, or how do I relate to knowledges that have been produced with different questions in mind? Some people say that some of the physical sciences are essentially sciences of the immanent properties of matter, whereas other sciences are compositional sciences. They're about how things are put together. I think almost all the social sciences and humanities are compositional in that way. They don't, you know, there isn't an isolatable ontological thing which can be appropriated by a particular science. They say, well, this is the science of meaning, or this is the science of space, or this is the science of time, or whatever. I don't think that you can pull those things out of the world without dragging lots of other things with them. So we're talking about perspectives rather than discrete and separatable parts of reality. So when I talk about geography, it's a perspective on the world. It's not phenomena in the world as our home, that can be separated from other phenomena. So the world doesn't fall out into disciplines. And so a geographical perspective is looking at things, and those things are being looked at by other sciences from other perspectives. And therefore, if I'm looking at a thing, then the perspectives of other sciences on that thing become useful to me. The perspective I bring might be different. Let me just give one example. Let's take epidemiology. Now, part of my work is on public health, the demography of public health and the ideology of public health. And I started working on 19th century cities, cholera, and I've been working more recently on AIDS. Now, I can set out a geographical account of how making ourselves at home on Earth involves questions of health. I've just published a paper in the Annals of the Association of American Geographers called Vital Geographies, which is an attempt to say, well, what does a geography of life look like? Quality of life and longevity. What does it look like? What would a geographer bring to this? And I'm going to overstate things just for the purposes of contrast, but epidemiology is quite a spatial science. It's about spread of disease and so on. But it treats, its geographical imaginary, its implicit geographical imaginary, is isolated individuals and an active mobile pathogenic agent. And this active mobile pathogenic agent comes along and knocks off some of these individuals. So we've got individuals, and then we've got this agent that spreads. Now, since I'm a geographer, I look at this phenomena in a slightly different way. I don't look at it as dots and arrows. I look at it as people making a home on Earth. So I look at how people actively transform nature in order to live, and in that transformation of nature, how they create vulnerabilities for themselves, or how they reduce vulnerabilities for themselves. I mean, if you don't build a shelter, you get very cold. So you've transformed nature to produce a dwelling space which can sustain a human life. Now, similarly, the active agents that connect places for a geographer are human patterns of trade and tourism and so on. So, we don't understand the arrow as a pure disease phenomenon. We understand it as an aspect of the interdependence between places. In other words, alongside the environment issue of how we transform nature and what that does for our vulnerabilities, there is the space issue of how we interconnect people in different places and what that does for our vulnerabilities. And then finally, in terms of place, we make place in company with other people, and community is at the heart of place. Community is at the heart of what makes place work for us, how we give it meaning, what it means to return home. It's not to return home to an empty house or to an empty city. That's not home. It's the people, it's the community that's part of that. And those, I would suggest that our main defences against sickness are communal defences. They're things we do together, collective things, like having specialised doctors, like having water supply systems, like having sewerage systems, like having shared hospitals and so on. In other words, our security is provided by what I call a social shell. I've written an article in Historical Geography about the notion of the social shell. This is what protects us. This is our security. Our security comes from the things we do together. We can't secure our own health individually. So now, I've got a very different account of what's going on in disease than a standard epidemiological one. Now, when that comes to something like AIDS, this leads me to a very different way of understanding the risks. If you understand AIDS as an active pathogen that moves from a source into a virgin population and knocks people off, your spatial imaginary is going to say, look, if I could only interrupt that movement, if I could only balkanise that space and keep that pathogen out, we'd be safe. My geographical understanding is that because what's moving are people and patterns of interaction, they are so intense, they are so common, that it is a pipe dream to imagine you ever could balkanise space in that way anymore. I would direct your attention to these places and these communities and ask the question, what is the social distribution of vulnerability? Because whatever disease comes through, be it a crack epidemic, be it tuberculosis, whatever, it goes to the same places first. We know where it's going to go. We know where it's going to intensify. It's going to intensify among the poor. And they are going to become, foci that will pose a risk to their richer neighbours. But if we look at the social distribution of vulnerability, the question how we cope with disease is how do we put our house in order so that when the disease arrives, which it inevitably will do once it's in the international system, how do we make sure that its depredations are limited? And that means reducing vulnerability. That's very different than the spatial imaginary epidemiology, which is let's put up some borders. Let's check people as they come in, let's do tests and so on. I'm saying that my understanding of human geography is that that will not work. We're too interconnected. And my understanding of the way place works is that the vulnerabilities that disease capitalizes upon are produced by poverty, they're produced by exclusion. If we address those issues, we make everybody more secure. So it's a completely different perspective on public health.